Ayman Khan here for Seconds Out with the Mirror Fighting's Donagh Corby. Donagh, sir, how you doing?
Fantastic. Great to speak to you, Ayman.
Great to speak to you once again, my good friend. Look, you're a social media boxing insider. Let's get the inside track on KSI versus Joe Fournier. Got a little bit heated there. Maybe you feel that maybe it had to, because this is maybe a bit of a step down opponent. Well, it depends how you look at it in terms of maybe the pay-per-view and the eyes on the fight.
Yeah, don't let Calla hear you say it's a step down. Certainly don't let Mams hear it. But yeah, I think it was a look. It was not a super heated press conference. Obviously, JJ is not in the mode of wanting to do a really standard YouTube boxing press conference at the moment. You know, he's been through a lot in the last week. He didn't speak to the press today. He did. You know, he read a pre-prepared statement to a select group of journalists. So, you know, he's been through a lot this last week. He was just in LA for WrestleMania. So, you know, the great highs of being in front of 80,000, the great lows of what happened on social media. So he's not in the best of form. I think that's fine. That's completely fair. And I think that Fournier really brought it today. You know, he did what he needed to do. And of course, the little push at the end. And he's doing his job. And, you know, I think by the time it gets to May 13th, like we're in the start of April now, this will all be forgotten about, whatever controversy. And we're going to have a big build-up come May.
Comparatively, look, we don't get the figures, but interest-wise, how do you feel this will compare to the other fights that KSI's had?
Yeah, well, look, they've done 3 pay-per-views now since August. 4 opponents, but 3 pay-per-views. 2 opponents have changed. So this will be the first time, if Fournier makes it to the ring, it'll be the first time in JJ's comeback that he's had an opponent stick around, which will be good. But yeah, I think it'll still be big. You know, Fournier's got, I mean, I don't know how much of a following, but he's got, you know, a little bit of panache. David Hay is involved in the promotion of this thing. And yeah, I think that there's definitely a chance it can be a big show. And there seems to be a base of kind of 200,000-300,000 people that will buy any KSI pay-per-view. So yeah, I could see it doing big numbers.
Look, in the midst of this fight, I don't know if it's just promoter talk, but Calla says he's met with Big John. Tommy Fury seemed to make a KSI versus Tommy Fury fight. How viable do you think it is that they will make that fight?
You know, I think that's quite a bit away yet from what I hear. But, you know, I talked to people on KSI's side, and because obviously it was my colleague Ben Davies who spoke to John Fury who revealed that information. And yeah, I spoke to some people on KSI's side, and they seem to think it's pretty legitimate. You know, the meeting happened in the UK, which is why Mams Taylor wasn't there. He's in the US. But if it would be a massive fight, bro. I mean, KSI versus Tommy. If KSI can go unbeaten, it would be huge. But it would be a massive test for JJ, because if we're honest, like, it's not really comparable. Like, Fournier is not at Tommy's level, you know, despite the record, despite the WBA ranking. Tommy's been boxing his whole life, and he just beat Jake Paul, who, you know, is a very high-level YouTube boxer. So yeah, I think that fight is not as far away as you might think, but also maybe not as close as Big John would like you to believe.
The fight feels now very much far away, considering you got the inside track on this one specifically. You spoke to both sides, that being KSI, Jake Paul, KSI, whichever way you want to spin it. It doesn't seem that it's likely to be happening right now, and they had a targeted date for the end of the year.
Yeah, look, they have a date in Cardiff in December. So I think it's possible, you know, it could still happen by then. Maybe this is all winding up to it. It would be massive for both of them. I know there was a lot of controversy, so I'll say it, that I think that it would do more pay-per-views than KSI versus Tommy. Mams, listen. But, you know, I think, yeah, it's the fight in YouTube boxing. It's always been the fight, you know. With Jake beat Deji, KSI beat Logan. Let's go back to the roots, man. Let's make it happen. And, you know, what I think is, honestly, KSI's team could make a couple more concessions. You know, we are talking about, like, he said that this is the reason he came back. I think he could possibly maybe let Jake have 1 or 2 more things in the negotiations. But over here in the UK in a stadium, or, you know, in December, they could do it in Principality or a massive arena here. It'd be pretty big.
Who stands right now as Jake Paul's potential next opponent? Calla Allen seems to think Jake might be going a different route, so not the rematch with Tommy Fury. We hear kind of whispers of Nate Diaz being in the mix maybe, but who stands right now as a potential Jake Paul opponent?
That's a great question. You know, I hear that he's going another direction. He's not going straight for the Tommy rematch. That's just the word about town, and Tommy seems to think that there's something else happening. But yeah, I think that it looks as though maybe Nate Diaz. I know that Logan was talking about Nate, and apparently that fight's off, and there's still a lot of steam around that. When I spoke to Jake, when he was planning on beating Tommy, he said to me, Nate is next. So, you know, Nate's still out there. Nate's still very much a live prospect. I know his teammate Chris Avila is fighting on KSI's show in a couple of weeks, but yeah, Nate is very much still a real possibility for Jake. If I were leaning in one direction, I would go maybe there. There's talk some other pro boxers out there. I can't remember the name off the top of my head, but some guy with kind of like a mixed record, about 50 fights. I don't know if I'd love that, but yeah, I think Nate would be a good opponent for Jake at this moment in time.
That happened before any kind of step back into the PFL. We know he's got that deal and looking to promote in there. Will that happen after that? Before? What's the situation there too?
Yeah, well, PFL's Vice President of Communications, Senior Vice President Lauren Mack has said that Jake will fight in MMA this year. Seems very fanciful, Amo. I don't know about that, but yeah, I think he will. I think he'll do an MMA fight. I just don't know exactly when or what the circumstances will be, and I couldn't imagine it being this year.
Final couple of things I want to brush through with you, Donagh. Kingpin tournament coming up, men's side and female side. Start with the men's side. Look, Anisson Gibbs stands the favourite. You feel that he will come through that tournament?
Yeah, I guess he is a favourite, but he could also lose to Austin McBroom when he got dropped in the last one. I think Gibb is probably, like, on paper the one that makes the most sense. Kenny's coming off the back of a tough loss. But, with Kenny's skill set, man, if he could get over this mental blockage he has, he could be a problem for any of these guys, Jake and everyone. But that's a big problem that he has, this thing of not getting his punches together. So, yeah, I think that Gibb stands as a pretty strong favorite. But, Winderson looks good. I don't know who this Filipek is. Maybe Filipek is class. I mean, there's no way of knowing. I guess there is because he's fought a couple times before. Yeah, he might be sick. But for right now, yeah, I guess you're right in Gibb being the favorite.
Do any of these influencer fighters, you feel, follow the path that Jake Paul has done by fighting a professional fighter? Look, I know KSI is doing that in some form of way. Hardcore boxing fans will argue the other side, but do you think any of these fighters will take that path that Jake Paul has done?
Well, a couple of people have kind of toyed with it. Like Paulie Malignaggi did one with some TikTok guy. I'm sure that was all very legitimate. And we've seen a couple of them. Anthony Taylor has crossed over and he's fought Ryan Taylor, he's fought Ashley Tebby, and I mean, you look at the way Anthony Taylor and Ashley Tebby went versus Ashley Tebby and King Kenny, it's like, there are levels to this. Dr. Mike and Chris Avila, Chris Avila, not exactly a superstar in the MMA world, and in boxing as well, he's I think he has an even record, or maybe now just a winning one. But yeah, people will make that transition more and more, and maybe some people will already turn pro. Slim looks good, Saul Pappy obviously looks good. Maybe we see a couple of pros coming out of this YouTube boxing thing.